Nothing makes a blood boil like a Costco run plus. Realizing the end doesn't come on the weekends. Darkest month of my life, I don't know if I'm coming back.
Hey guys, so this is the original Game Boy Color. It's an incredible system, but one bad thing about it is that the screen isn't backlit. And while there are pretty good alternatives to being able to mod your Game Boy, which I'm going to cover in another tutorial, there's these new reproduction Game Boys that are coming out of China now. This one's called the GB Boy. There's a bunch of different ones. But this one, as you can see, has a nice fully backlit screen. The screen itself is kind of terrible. The aspect ratio is kind of stretched out, and the quality of this is pretty not so great. So what I'm going to try to do today is see if I can fit the insides of the GB Boy in an original Game Boy Color. So the original Game Boy is pretty simple. It's this is the PC board, and these are the button membranes, and then there's some buttons. There's the the power button, and this is a little infrared thing, and there's your screen. Typically these are kind of stuck in here with some adhesive, but this one's already been removed, so this is primarily what I need. I'm not going to be using this today. And then the GB Boy, I've already taken this apart once just to kind of see if I think it was possible, and I think it kind of is. A lot of stuff does seem to line up in here pretty well, but this case is so cheap. Just from taking it apart, just from unscrewing the screws, a couple of the screw posts up here already kind of broke. So I'm not too concerned. It's just, one of those things. This thing's kind of interesting. When you put a game in here and you turn on the system, it switches. It has this little switch here. It's a little momentary switch, and that activates the card reader, so you can play actual Game Boy games. If there's no game in here, then it reads from the built-in ROM. I think this is the ROM chip here, but I'm going to go ahead and take this apart a little bit further so I can get to just the PC board here. But that's not what we're interested in today. Alright, so this is primarily what we want. And you can kind of see that the button membranes are pretty similar. They're actually pretty close in size. So I really think that this is going to work. At least, for sure it's going to work, but I think it's going to work pretty easily. The little infrared thing here looks pretty similar. Alright, so we're probably going to have to make some modifications to the Game Boy Color shell. But you can see this is the LCD. And yeah, nice little compact thing. The one issue here is that I think this is where the ROMs are stored. I'm not 100% sure yet, but you can see that this kind of sticks up above the case, above the shell, right here. I don't think any of these screw posts are going to line up, so we're going to have to kind of remove some of those. But you can see that the D-pad and the A and B buttons are pretty close. The start and select is pretty close. We might have to make some slight modifications, but yeah, I think this is going to work. So let's go ahead and start by, I'm going to go ahead and remove this because I'm not interested in the built-in games. I primarily want to do this mod just for the backlit screen, and I'm probably going to be removing the part for the backlit games. So let's start just by removing this real quick. Okay, get rid of that switch. We're probably gonna have to bridge this little connection here. So let's see if we can power this on just with this. I think this is 3 volts, just like the normal. Yeah. So you can actually use the original Game Boy Color power adapter, the AC adapter for this, with the GB Boy. And power's on. I need the screen here. Okay. Looks okay. And let's try Aladdin. Okay, so here's the Game Boy Color D-pad and the Game Boy Color A and B button membrane. And it seems like I can actually play just like this. This is pretty terrible, but... And I'm gonna die any second here. But yeah, I think these are gonna line up okay. So let's see what else needs to be done. If we... The screen I'm pretty sure fits in here. Yeah, the screen fits nicely in there, so... what's hitting here? We're definitely gonna have to remove this LED. I'm gonna worry about the LCD later here. So let's go ahead and remove this little LED. And that's pretty easy. Ouch. There we go. Well, whatever. This thing isn't too expensive, so if I destroy it, it's not the end of the world. There are a few other issues. Like you can see that this doesn't line up here, so we're gonna actually have to cut the shell slightly to make this fit, as well as the volume. And we're gonna have to figure out something for the power button, the power switch. But let's try and see what this does. This might be for the LCD. This might be like a driver for it, or it could just be. This could be where the ROMs are stored. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I figured out that this is where the ROMs are stored. So I went ahead and removed this, and I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall the LCD just to make sure everything still works at this stage. And yeah, looks like it's working. And it's not going to the screen with all the ROMs, so let's go ahead and put in a game. And there we go, it looks like it's working. Yeah, it seems to be working. So step 1 is to remove this piece where all the ROMs are stored. You can always put it back. Shouldn't be too difficult to resolder all those little connections there. Okay, so now it's mostly going to be just about modifying the Game Boy Color shell to fit all this. So it's already fitting a little bit better, obviously, because I removed the LED and I removed the ROM chip. So it's not going to actually be able to close up. It looks like we're going to need to remove a little bit from here. I could either cut the PC board probably, or just cut away some of this little tab here, or what else? Yeah, lining it up is going to be a little bit of an issue because there's not going to be much to hold this in place this way. But I'm going to go ahead and start cutting away a little bit of the shell, and I'll be right back. Okay, so that actually wasn't too bad. Basically what I had to do was just kind of put it in here and then kind of like guess and check. You kind of put it in, see where you need to cut more, and then you kind of have to guess a little bit. But you can see let's see here. So it kind of actually like almost clicks into place. It's a very satisfying fit. The board is actually below the shell, almost all the way around. Down here is a little bit tight. And I had to remove just a little bit from here. I had to remove all the screw posts. These two right down here actually line up pretty close, but I don't know if it's going to be close enough to actually use screws on it. So, but the top you can see actually fits almost perfectly. I just cut a little bit away here so you can just like reach in there with your finger. Maybe I'll try and make some kind of button or something to like attach to that. But you can reach the power switch kind of okay. The volume should be okay. I think these buttons look like they should potentially line up. But one issue here is that it kind of broke off, but the speaker is a little bit too thick. And it actually like causes a bit of a gap. So I'm gonna put a different speaker on it. I have a thinner speaker I can use. So I'm just gonna desolder this one. Put it this way. Okay, so that should be a little bit better. So one issue is I had to remove the little posts that this holds this in place, so I'm gonna have to figure something else out for that. Okay, and the screen is definitely gonna need some kind of alignment, but okay, A and B are working. Left, right, up and down. Well, up doesn't do anything in Tetris, but this one I guess I need to make sure that it lines up really accurately here. Okay, so a few more finishing touches and we should be ready to... I'm just gonna glue it together with epoxy, like plastic epoxy. But for a finishing touch, I'm gonna add this is an 0402 LED, and I'm just gonna kind of epoxy it in here, and then hot glue it in here. Now let's see if the power LED works. And the power LED is working. So now I'm gonna go glue this and I'll be back when it's ready. Alright, so I'm gonna let the glue cure. And it looks like that part's holding at least. And yeah, this part seems to be holding too. This part is mostly holding. Let's make sure it still works at this point. Okay, so this is actually pretty much fully working. Okay, so there are a few issues with this thing. If you did want to include the ROMs that come on the GB Boy, these little pins are actually not too... they're pretty big, so it'd be really easy to like position this somewhere else inside the case. Maybe down below here behind the batteries, or I guess it could be possible to just like kind of lower it, because it's on there kind of like this, so it sticks out a little bit. I guess it would be possible to kind of like just bend it over and put it behind the LCD. I think there's still a little bit of space there, so that could be possible too if you don't want to like run wires to all these little pins. And honestly, all of these pins might not even be in use, so it could be even simpler, but that's something to look into later. The lens doesn't really line up properly, so that is kind of one issue. And you definitely have to glue. I shouldn't have done that. There we go. You definitely have to glue the case because it needed to be pretty much heavily modified to incorporate this part here. The bottom half is pretty much the most difficult area. The actual PC board of the GB Boy is like the exact size. It like clicks into place and it actually like spreads out the rear shell just ever so slightly. So it's a really tight fit, but it actually does fit. So I'm gonna go ahead and put on this this new. It's just a plastic lens. I don't want to waste one of my good glass lenses, but just to make this feel like I finished something. And so I think it'll still be kind of playable with this lens. I mean, you could of course leave the lens off, but I think that looks kind of ugly. I know they have like clear lenses too, but I don't really like the look of those. So while the aspect ratio is pretty bad, the you can still see most of the screen. I don't think it's too much of an issue. You can definitely see all of the screen in this direction. It's just cut off a little bit on the sides. So here's a good example. The buttons feel mostly okay. The A and B button are just ever so slightly off. So they're a little bit softer than usual. But the D-pad feels almost perfect. And the start and select they stick out just as much as normal. So it's totally playable. You just have to maybe push a little bit more harder on the A and B. But yeah, if you just want like a quick little hacked way to get a backlit Game Boy Color, I don't really recommend this way. It's kind of turns out kind of ugly, but somewhat kind of works. So there you have it. That's the GB Boy in an OEM. Well, yeah, this actually is an OEM shell, but in an original Game Boy Color shell.
Nothing makes a blind like a Costco run plus. Realizing the end doesn't come on the weekends. And weak friends, all ones you hesitate to answer you unless it's convenient. Bon voyage, forget that old world. Reaching away from the darkest slump of my life. I don't know if I'm coming back. The 718 is a gun. Sweet to choose.